I think it's going to be like that anyway.
Okay. Good evening. It is 5:15 and I will call the meeting to order and confirm that we do have quorum. At this time, I'm looking for approval of the agenda. Councillor Cox.
I move that the agenda be adopted as presented.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor Westwell. Discussion. Councillor Westwell.
There was a suggestion at a meeting of council that there would be some additional items on the agenda tonight for discussion. If it was job description, if it was meant to be added tonight, or is that? For a special meeting, right? So because it's posted. So I just meant that was mentioned at council, and I didn't mean to comment on it before the agenda was posted. But anyway, it's a special meeting. We can't add to it. It's already been 48 hours. So
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. At this time, I would like to welcome our telephone delegation for our 2020 audited financial statements.
Hi, it's Heather Gill here from Avery Cooper. Okay, so everybody has a financial statement in front of them, I'm assuming. So first of all, first I'll say that it's a clear opinion. There were no issues, so all of the numbers that are here we're pretty comfortable with. We'll just start with statement of financial position. That's on page 1. So this is the statement at December 31st, 2020. That was where the town sat at that point. So I just want to point out a couple of things here. For the cash and cash equivalents, it's quite a bit higher than last year because of the deferred revenue, the monies that have been received but have not yet been spent. The trade and other accounts receivable, that's up by over $1 million. Most of that is CWWF. NACA owed you on December 31st, $1.3 million for that, and then another $300,000 for the Small Communities Fund. The rest is basically the same kind of thing as was happening last year. The inventory for resale land, that's the West Grove property. It went down because of there was a sale of one property from the West Grove this year. On the liability side, the accounts payable are quite a bit higher than they were last year. That just has to do with the holdbacks. There were some cab construction wasn't paid, roads construction wasn't paid, things like that. So I'm sure they've all been paid since then, but that's why it was so much higher at the end of the year. The deferred revenue, that's up mostly because of the gas tax funding that was received that hadn't been spent. The long-term debt note, that one should be paid off by December 2024. Other than that, the tangible capital assets, most of that is the difference anyway, sorry, is the water and sewage line replacement and the rec center. And then the inventory for consumption land, there was one additional property sold during the year. It wasn't part of the West Grove property. That's why it's not in the top section. That's it for this page. There's accumulated surplus of $41 million at this point. Any questions on this page? No? Okay, we'll continue. The next page is the statement of operations. So what happened during the year? All right, so I'm just going to, again, point out just a couple of things. For the government transfers for operations, there was an additional $235,000 received for the COVID restart program. For the Government transfers for capital, that's the CWWF, the small communities funding, the CPI, the gas tax funding. Those 4 items are what makes up that 2.7, sorry. Then on the expense side, pretty much comparable to last year and to budget. And then the land development fund, that was the sale of those 2 properties. The annual surplus, the 3rd item from the bottom, 2.3 million this year. Any questions on that? Okay, I'm going to jump quite a ways down. So if we go to page 17, that's the government transfers. So these are the funds that you receive from the government this year. Was everybody there?
Yep.
Okay, I'm not getting any replies, so I'm hoping everybody's reading it. Okay, so the first couple of items are the Government of Canada transfers. So that's the CWWF for the water infrastructure replacement, and then the Small Communities Fund, that's for the recreation center. Halfway down the Government of the NWT, there's where you're seeing the COVID Safe Restart funding of $235,000. The rest, quite a few of them are actually very comparable to last year. There is an early childhood one for $250,000. It has not yet been spent. So if you look the last item in that section, it says transfers from to deferred revenue. That 250 is included in there. It hasn't been spent yet. Then the other restricted funding, that's always the gas tax and the CPI. That's the amount that you received this year. And there's some funds that went back into deferred revenue is 1.6 million. Right, so if there's no questions on that one, we'll skip to page 22, the contractual rights. Okay, so that one this is about what you're still expecting to get. So there are 3 projects that are in process, basically, that it'll be done within the next couple of years. So there's the CWWF. There was $3.7 million altogether, and right now you still have another 1.6 million to spend for that. The Canada's Low Carbon Economy Leadership Fund, $360,000. Very, very little has been spent, less than $1,000. And then the Small Communities Fund, the 2.4 million, there's there's 300,000 that have been spent so far. So those are the 3 multi-year contracts or agreements. Then there's the COVID note here that basically just says, it talks about the COVID, obviously, and it just talks about the possible ramifications. We're still not sure what they are, but you did receive $235,000 from the government. Okay, the next page, page 23, I wanted to point out the note 28, statutory requirements outstanding. This has been here for a couple of years now. I'm sure you're all aware of this one. It has to do with the water and sewer services interruption insurance, and that the town was to pay up to $10,000 in costs. However, they're paying more than the $10,000. I believe you're looking into that bylaw. So, all right. The next page is the tangible capital assets. I'll point out a couple of things on that one. If you look at the assets under construction, that is the water and sewer line replacement and the rec center. Next year, we're thinking that probably the water and sewer line replacement will no longer be in the assets under construction. They'll actually be done. So then the other thing I want to point out is under vehicles, there's that credit for the disposal. So that is for a fire truck and for the water truck that was rolled. And then there was another small truck. So the proceeds of $148,000 was put through here. And went further down in the same vehicles, it shows accumulated amortization on disposals of $265. So the difference really is the proceeds that you got from insurance. Okay, any questions on that? All right, I'm not going to go through each of the different departments. I will go through the water and sewer one though, or at least point it out on page 29. I just want to let you know that again, it's a deficiency, so it's in a deficit. So obviously something needs to be done because of course it is supposed to be a self-sustaining fund, right? Okay, then on page 32, 32 and 33 are the gas tax expenditures since the gas tax started coming in. So on page 33, it shows that you still have 3.5 million that has not yet been spent. You'll notice that there's a credit in 2020 for $257,000. That has to do with the water and sewer infrastructure replacement. In 2019, we thought that we could use gas tax funds for that. So it's sitting there. And then MACA indicated that you were not allowed to use gas tax funding for that. So we had to move it to CPI funding in this year. So on page 34 is the beginning of the CPI. And then on page 36, you'll see that 257,000 coming in. And on page 36, the amount that's still not spent for CPI funding is 4.5 million. Any questions on that? Okay. Page 37, this is your clean water wastewater fund. So that is your water and sewer infrastructure. So you've received 1.8 so far, you've spent 2.1, so there's still money coming. That I believe it still needs to be claimed. And part of that is the holdback, right? And then on page 38 is small communities funding. So far you've just spent 300,000 for the rec center. And then the only other page I needed to talk to you about was page 40, the expenses by object. I just wanted to point out that it exists, and this is all of the departments on one page, basically. For example, for the salaries, the 4.5 million, that is all of the salaries for the entire town. So when I look at this one, that's pretty comparable. So any questions on any of this stuff? Okay, well, that's all I have. Unless there's some questions on the financial statements. No questions?
I'll just give council a minute.
Okay.
Councillor Westwell?
This actually might be more of a question for administration, but I'm assuming that the difference in the rather large difference in the water sewer revenue expenses, where we knew in 2019, of course, it was a deficiency, but in 2020, deficiency got remarkably larger. I believe that was related to the water sewer interruption, the additional costs and overtime associated with that summer project, or it went up by $180,000, which almost doubled its previous efficiency from the year before. This is page 29.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at the specifics, and it looks like the water treatment plant operations and maintenance went up by 65,000. And the water delivery went up, but I couldn't tell you offhand the reason for it. I don't know if there's somebody in administration that could help.
Yeah, I suspect that was kind of where I was directing it, because the additional cost with water delivery and allocations and maintenance and plant operations, I was assuming it had to do with the sort of additional shifts we ran to sort of accommodate the project. But I'm just guessing.
Ms. White?
Yeah, that is definitely a possibility. I think also, though, This relates to our water meters that are non-functioning or not reading properly, which is a project we've been working on since before COVID began, before the pandemic began. So it's something we're just getting able to get back to now, which is making sure that we are setting a economic rate for water, which we can't do at the moment because we have over 300 water meters that are not properly reading for various reasons. So we're just working on getting the project started on getting those replaced, which will allow us then to set the proper economic rate and recover the revenue to make it more self-sustaining.
There are also a couple of capital assets that were included in your capital asset budget that aren't physically capital assets. So we actually moved 84,000 over from a capital asset into the expenses. That would be for repairs instead of repairs and maintenance versus a capital item like a betterment. We actually moved 84,000 for that.
Dr. Cox?
Further to Councillor Westfall's question, I wonder, does the water treatment plant operations and maintenance line, does that include the extra chemicals ordered to deal with turbidity during 2020?
I would have no idea about that.
So certainly, there was a larger purchase in 2020 that would actually cover 2021 as well, I believe. So with that, depending on when the chemicals were ordered and how much is used, 1 year it might be more than another. So you might see the budget spent high 1 year and then spent low the next year.
Supplemental, Councillor Cox. Any further questions or comments? Heather, did you have anything additional?
Have you guys all seen the memorandum of accounting systems? And do you have it in front of you?
We have it in front of us, yes.
So I'll just take we're just going to go through it quickly. I think we've talked about most of these things in the past. I just don't want to forget anything or miss anything. So we'll just run through that quickly if we could. So the reserve and reserve deposits, there were very few transfers during the year. So so that requires that the deferred revenue for the CPI and gas tax funding be in a separate bank account. In all of your bank accounts altogether, you have enough to cover that for sure, but it's just not in the separate bank accounts. So that's something that needs to be moved from your daily operations account into the gas tax and CPI account so that you have enough to cover. The property and school taxes, as in the past, there was no reconciliation done, but I believe that's actually in process now. So that's fine. I left it on there because it's still not completed, right? Then the next item, other than the federal and crown payments, there have been no payments to the JNWT for school taxes since May of 2019. So that's why the actual school tax payable is quite a bit higher this year than it was last year. Those payments should actually be being made, or at least some of them, right? Okay, the next page, the wages and benefits. There are some NEBS premiums owing that should be collected from the employees. Most of that is actually coming from employees that were on leave and their premiums were being paid, but the employees haven't paid it back yet, or they haven't been recovered from the employees. So I believe they're planning to change the process slightly so that, in fact, you can get the funds back from the employees while they're on leave. And the next one, it's been outstanding for a while. The accrual for the employee annual leave is not completed correctly. That's not a huge deal, but we probably want to make sure that you have something in writing from the employees, maybe once a year, something that says that they agree with the balance of funds that are owing to them for their annual leave. The water and sewage, that is the same as in the past. I don't think we're going to go into that. And today we're all aware of that, I'm pretty sure, right? Page 3, again, the examination of rates. There were some issues with the rates, what the customers are being charged. And of course, I understand that that's another one of those things that are in progress. And the determination of the consumption of water. Again, I believe that's part of the new water and sewer bylaw that's eventually going to come into play once and then the meter readings or the meters that get fixed will help with that, right? Then the contract with the Smith Landing First Nations, it expired a number of years ago. And then on the last page, well, not quite the last page, on page 4, during the review, we noted that there was no capital assets policy. However, I'm aware that I believe administration is in the process of actually creating a policy right now. Then the next one is the bylaw for the water and sewage interruption. So that one's normal. We've had that one for a couple of years also. And then the final one is the statutory requirements. Again, it has to do with the bylaw about the interruption insurance and that the costs over $10,000 are actually being paid instead of the customer having to pay everything that's over $10,000, which is in accordance with the bylaw, right? So, and that's everything I have. Any questions on that?
Any questions or comments by council? Ms. White?
I just wanted to touch base with you. I think that Heather covered this very well in regards to where administration is in with to these deficiencies. And as you can see, many of them are in progress. And I think we'll see forward movement on them this fiscal year pretty significantly. So I look forward to this being updated after the next audit.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Smith?
Thank you, and thanks for the presentation, Heather. It's very, it's not particularly technical, but it's just very detailed. I guess I just wanted to read out the very first line of the management discussion analysis is that overall the town of Portsmouth is in a solid financial position, which is a great thing to read at the beginning of a audited financial statement. Total assets exceed total liabilities, blah, blah, blah. The town has sufficient resources to meet its financial obligations. I mean, 2020 has been a pretty exceptional year. It's not surprising to see a number of capital projects underspent or, potentially been on hold. It's amazing that the town was able to accomplish what it was able to accomplish in 2020, given the circumstances. So, yeah, I'm happy with this. It's nice to see that there aren't any new, there's nothing really in terms of what the audit identifies as outstanding issues or things that we've known about for a few years, and they're being worked on. There's no new red flags in here, so that's very comforting for me as a counselor. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
It's also nice to see. It's also nice to see we're earning interest, significant interest on the money in the bank.
Yes. Yep.
Any additional questions or comments by council? Or administration? Heather, thank you so much for presenting to us this evening. I always enjoy working with you, and I'm very grateful for your presentations that are very clear and always have good news. So at this time, I will be then looking for a motion. Councillor Couvret.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the 2020 audited financial statements be accepted as presented.
Thank you. Seconded by Deputy Mayor Smith. Discussion. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Thank you again, Heather.
Thank you very much. We'll talk to you soon, hopefully.
Take care. At this time, I'm looking for excusing of council members. Councillor Cox.
I move that Councillors Campbell, MacArthur, and Bolio be excused from the special meeting of council on April 27th, 2021.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Couvret. Discussion. We did hear from all councillors that they would not be able to attend this evening. Thank you. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. And a motion to adjourn, Councillor Couvret.
I move the meeting be adjourned at 5:45 p.m.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Cox. Discussion. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.